everything is going to be all right.
There you go. Happy Monday, man. How are you?
I love a good challenge, especially unscripted.
There you go. All right. Man, this year is flying by. I say that every year. It feels like the first quarter is almost done. Uh, I think people could still close transactions before the month's out. There's certainly an opportunity to do some fast closes, 2 week closes, that kind of thing. But man, we're already almost second quarter.
Yeah, it's cooking. It's blowing by. Yeah, you're 3 weeks out. So if you're going to close something in March, you better get on your horse.
No kidding. But I would encourage people if you've got a pipeline, there's no reason you couldn't close something that fast.
There's not at all, but you've got to probably have that conversation already started in queue.
Oh, 100%. All right, let's hit the numbers real quick. So Fulton County, if I can get my cursor over here, uh, inventory's at 791. So just kind of looking historically, that's up, right? We had 810 last week. We're at 791 this week. One of the themes of this week's call is that inventory is up. Now, it's not surprising, Rick, because obviously inventory climbs in the spring, right? Like once March gets here, we see inventory picking up. Um, but I think the market that it I don't want to say it's weird. So we want to be strategic, but I think it's a really good sign to see inventory climbing right now. Active under contracts at 164, which is
That's
way
awesome.
higher than it's been in Fulton County. Pendings at 301, which is way higher than it's been. And then closings, we had 316 closings in the last 7 days, which to me is crazy because it's higher than the end of last month closings, meaning normally the end of the month is the highest 7 day total. We had 260 in Fulton County, which included the end of February. And then the first week of the month, we had 316. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. And it
Um,
shows the absorption rate closer to 50%, which means every 2 months you're turning your inventory over. So the good news is that number's up, but the almost better news is that active inventory is up as well. So hopefully we're headed towards a little more normalcy and balance.
Absolutely. Well, let's hit some of these other counties real quick. Um, yeah, so definitely one of the themes today is inventories up. Spring market. If I run out to DeKalb went from 424 to 433. Um, Highest inventory number year to date in DeKalb County. Active under contract dropped from actually, I think these are backwards, Stephen. Active under contract is 105. So we went from 96 to 105 in active under contract, which is extremely high compared to what it was. Pendings at 171, which just kind of looking back, still same comment, healthy number of pendings. And then closing, same comment, 183. I'm just surprised by this because historically the first week of the month's not usually the high closing number. But I'll take it. That's a healthy number for DeKalb County.
Yeah, and it shows buyers are beginning to, I guess, accept reality, and the current market is the current market, and consumer confidence is a major element to our sustained sales ratios.
Absolutely. Hitting Cobb County, the third county here, inventory stayed the same at 382, but that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. That's a really high number for Cobb County. I think we made comments previously. 300 seemed to be like a normal number of inventory in Cobb County. And 382, we're getting close to that 400 active number. 98 active under contract. Be healthy. I think at some point we're going to break into triple digits here. Pendings at 203. Man, that is just spring market all over. And then closing, same comment, 224. Uh, it's just surprising to me, but I'll take it, right? Like we had a big week of closings the last 7 days. Um, but I think if I'm a producing agent, inventory's up and man, the market's moving. And I should see that as an optimistic statement. I should see that as possibility. I should see that as if I'm not having those results and others are, the market is, I need to check myself and go, what's going on? Am I not doing the right activities? Am I not doing enough activities? I was on a group text over the weekend with some producing agents that were saying they're having to do 5 times the activities right now to get the same numbers they were getting during the pandemic. Now, we know the pandemic was an abundant real estate market, but what they're saying is, hey, we can have the same results, but we're having to put in 5 times the effort. And I think that's probably a true statement. And to some people, that sounds like work. But to others, hey man, if I know I got to do it to get the income, I can see the results, I'm going to go do it, right? What do you think, Rick?
I mean, your conversion rate is your conversion rate. If the market's up 20% and you're down 20%, there's a 40% swing. So I think that is the waterline or the litmus for success. And sometimes the market, if the market's off 25% and you're only down 10%, you're actually theoretically winning. But if you don't know what the market's doing, then you don't know what that waterline is or that mark of, the where's the mainstream current running. And at the end of the day, your conversion rate's your conversion rate. And what's important is to recognize what it takes for you to win. And if what you're doing isn't winning, then to your point, it might be 10 times more activity, not five. And so, but irrelevant of your, conversion, if you input more, you're going to have a greater output. But you've got to be able to gauge it, track it, and then have comparative analysis to know whether you're winning.
Absolutely. All right. So on the realestatestats.com website, if you click on national statistics, Luke's got all our the slides out of Gary Keller's vision speech from Family Reunion, but I wanted to hit one slide today. And the slide is this treasury spread. So let me explain it and then let's talk about it. So historically, the dotted green line says that historically, it's not perfect, but historically, the difference between the 30-year fixed rate mortgage and the 10-year treasury note is 1.74%. So in theory, if the 10-year treasury rate was at 2%, mortgage interest rates would be at 3.74. Does that make sense? The spread between the rate and the 10-year treasury rate historically is 1.74%. You can see it's not exact, obviously, and sometimes that spread gets large. So in 2008, fourth quarter 2008, the spread got to 2.46%, meaning the rates were 2.5% higher than the 10-year treasury. And then immediately the spread came down. And by first quarter 2010, they were 1.28% higher than the 10-year treasury. Well, right now, we're at 2.85% higher than the 10-year treasury, which historically is the highest it's ever been from a spread perspective. So if history treats us well, we expect that to come down. Here's another way to look at it. If the Fed does nothing, there's probably about a percentage point built into the mortgage interest rate that it could move without the Fed doing anything. So if I click over to today's rates, which right now the 30-year fixed is 6.85%. That says that if the spread was accurate, interest rates would be 5.8%. Um, I don't think we're going to see 5.8%. Let's be clear. But it says that the rates are priced high compared to the 10-year treasury right now. And I do believe we have downward movement. So, a couple comments about interest rates. Um, Historically, this is a good interest rate. You don't want to hear that because you've been used to 3% interest rates. But historically, this is a good interest rate. I do believe, Rick, the Fed's going to meet in May, June timeframe. And I do believe the economists think that they're going to pull the rate down a little bit. And we should see lower interest rates the second half of this year, starting this summer. What do I think? Brett's crystal ball. I think you'll see low 6%. I don't know that we'll see a 5 on that. I think you'll see a 5 in the 15-year fixed and in the FHA and VA. But I think that 30-year fixed is going to creep down as the year goes on, closer to 6. But I don't think it's going to go much lower than 6. Do you agree, disagree? Fight me. I'm good.
I would agree, but I would also be careful in having conversations with your clients that would compel them to think waiting is a better strategy. I think
Agreed.
it needs, if a half a point changes your perspective on the house you're buying, you're probably not buying the best possible house for you. And so we've all heard it said, and it's just a subtle reminder. You buy the house and you date the rate. And if the rate goes down more than a point, point and a quarter, point and a half, a no cost refinance is probably in your future. And the gift is you've locked into the best possible house for your experiential life and your family. And so, yes, do things look optimistic? I like the spread conversation. And I think sharing data like this makes you the economist of choice, which is the ultimate position to be in as a real estate expert. And nothing trumps buying the perfect house. And it's rare that it shows up at the perfect time. It's like timing the
100%.
market. It's almost impossible to time the stock market or any market. It's just fluctuating constantly. But the best time to buy residential real estate or commercial really is now or any time in the past if you hold it long enough and you don't force yourself into a sale position because of illiquidity.
Absolutely.
Hey
So I
Brett.
find, yeah, go ahead.
Hey, the chart that you had where for the 10-year bond rate, was that current or was that the end of Q4? The 2.8.
Uh, this is Q4 2023.
And where is it now? Do you know?
I could
I
guess,
can
but
look
it's
it.
probably easier.
I'm just trying to
Pull it.
understand the gap today because I'm having those conversations with a few clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see if I can find it for you real quick. Of
I'm
course.
sorry, I didn't mean for you to.
You're fine. Market Watch is the easiest way to find it. But I could probably just Google it. Let's see if it'll let me sign in. Come on, people. All right, 10-year treasury.
As of March 1st, mortgage rates were at 7.1 at the time, and the spread was 2.89 on March 1st.
So here's what it's done the last 3 months. So right now it's at 4.1,
Yeah.
but fourth quarter, it looks like the end of the year was 3.9. So it's actually a little higher right now. But remember, it's
Right.
about the spread, not about where it's at, right?
Right.
So notice right here in February, if you remember, mortgage rates were over 7 in late February. And then it came down to just under 7 right now. So it's not an exact science, but it's certainly something you can pay attention to, right?
Yeah.
All
It's still
right.
like
So
2.7, so that's good.
no. I appreciate the question. Um, One of our competitors did a survey with consumers, and I found this article really interesting. So the age-old saying in real estate's always been location, 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 right? However, in the survey they did, when choosing a home, what is most important to you? Price is actually ranking higher than location right now. And I think it has everything to do with affordability. And so what do I do with this information? Um, I think when you're doing a consultation, uh, you're probably spending a little more time talking about affordability and pricing because that's what people are ranking in decision making more so than where do you want to live. Now, I still see location at 50%, and then I see condition at 27% and size at 23%. Um, but price is becoming such an important factor to the home buying process right now because of interest rates, because of affordability, because of pricing, right? Um, I thought this was an interesting aha because previously you would start a buyer search with where do you want to live, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, and then we would secondarily work our way into price. Where I think now price is probably your first conversation versus where do you want to live, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. I mean, and not the capacity to buy anything you want. I mean, that was in the rearview mirror for most, especially middle class purchasers. But I don't know, as a career realtor, I can't tell you how many times it started out with location, 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 and then it became the quality of the house, the size of the house, the experience of the community. They end up doing, because you couldn't find it in the price range you were looking, the concentric circle took you to an entirely different part of Atlanta, suburbs and beyond. Sometimes rarely do people buy exactly what they say they want on the first at the first conversation, the first consultation experience. And I have to chuckle, Brett. I want to meet the people who have nothing in particular. They're
Yeah,
like, I'm really looking for nothing in particular weighs in on my priority list.
absolutely. Um, So there was an article on Fox Business over the weekend that said home buyers need to make 80% more than they had to make in 2020 to comfortably afford a home. That number was shocking to me.
Staggering.
I thought there was a chart down here. Maybe there's not, but um, I've looked at some graphs and the income somebody had to make in 2020 to afford the median price house versus the income they've got to make to afford the median price house today is drastically different. So what's inside that comment is higher interest rates, meaning higher payment. We've done a great job in the industry of getting a lot of money for our sellers. We're also paying the price of that now, meaning we've price appreciated in the industry astronomically since 2020, um, which is requiring more income to afford the real estate these days. And I don't believe income has grown nationwide at the same rate. So it's changing affordability, and it's just an awareness thing. The average mortgage payment has nearly doubled since January 2020. That's not great news, but it's a reality that we're dealing with and you need to be aware of, right? Any comments on that, Rick?
And I bought a second home in Florida in 2020, and I got 2.75 on a jumbo loan, and prices have escalated here 10 to 15% each of the last 3 years. So you just see the compounding effects of price appreciation, the cost of money, and the reality that, a carton of eggs and a gallon of milk, man, everything's gone up. So
Yeah.
that sounds staggering and ridiculous. And then maybe it's not. I mean, that could be an accurate figure.
So the Atlanta Business Chronicle is talking about Atlanta homeownership requires six-figure income in 2024 per the report. Um, you know, is that something new? I don't know. I mean, the reality is I used to joke with team leaders because every person that walked in the door saying they wanted to get into real estate, the number one, you say, how much money you want to make? Everybody said six figures. Well, that's been the same comment for 15 years. And I actually think the world has shifted. It's probably not $100,000 anymore. It's probably they're gunning for something a little bit higher than that. But the report states that Atlanta residents would have to earn a gross annual household income of more than $115,000 to afford a typical home in the city. The median income in Atlanta was $83,000 in 2022. So there's a gap here between the annual median income and what it takes to afford a typical house. Um, is that every buyer? No. I mean, it's just we're using averages, but it's something to be aware of because the average home right now is 370. Do we think prices are going to go backwards? No. Do we think income's going to drastically increase? No. So it's going to be a climate of our industry for a while until something changes. Um, this article, Rick, talks about the spring housing market expected to see more inventory, which we saw when we went over the numbers, but won't be without its challenges. So inside this article, it talks about, well, first it says this year's spring housing market is expected to have more inventory and less volatile mortgage rates than last year. But the challenges are it's likely that buyers will face intense competition as the for sale housing market enters its prime buying and selling season. And then it goes on to say the average days on market nationwide was 17 days. And that's 10 days shorter than it was before the pandemic. So, a couple comments here. This is my crystal ball, my opinion. I do think inventory is up, but I think we had pent up buyer demand and we're buckle up. We're in for a competitive spring housing market. I think there's going to be a lot of multiple offers. I think there's going to be um, people fighting over houses. And the byproduct of that is price appreciation. It pushes prices up. So I would go out on a limb and say there's no chance of us having price depreciation if this is the climate of real estate in the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, and this is a global conversation. Remember, in micro markets that's where the real rubber meets the road when you're consulting a client. So street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, you've got to know your local numbers to be able to overlay that against the bigger picture. And that can be a very compelling story for a buyer to hear and understand why that purchase makes sense and why you're beating the average or beating the curve. And the data at the very beginning when we were looking at Cobb, Fulton, and DeKalb really supports this. Inventory is climbing, but the absorption rate was climbing at a disproportionate percentage. If you look back, 8, 10, 12 weeks, almost consecutively, it was closer to 25 to 30% absorption. It was close to 50 in just about all three counties. So
Yeah,
there is pent-up buyer demand. I think you're spot on with that. And I do think the wiser, craftier agents who get there first and are able and nimble to make quick decisions and create offers that are compelling are going to always win.
100%. The other thing I felt encouraged by, we've been quoting that we believe 2024 is going to have more home sales than 2023, and we've been quoting 15% from a crystal ball perspective. But if you look at the 4-week period ending February 25th, listings of U.S. homes for sale rose 13% year over year. So the inventory's gone up 13%. We're still kind of holding to that 15% increase in 2024 right now. So I feel pretty encouraged by that, Rick.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So it looks like we hit all our articles. Any conversation or comments about what we've covered today?
What does the real world feel like right now for you with clients and consumer confidence and perspective on where we're headed?
Everybody
guys.
it was.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, go ahead, Hooper.
No, I definitely agree with the fact that having to do more to earn the same amount of money, because it definitely feels like I'm putting in a lot more hours and education of the client in order to make deals happen. And it's a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. For me specifically, this is Steven, and I was going to just piggyback off of, I just had a buyer consult Saturday. They led with price. They didn't lead with location. The price is going to drive where they can obviously be from my perspective. And I kind of, when they say 600 up to, I know exactly where they need to be, but it's their job to decide how to get there. And also a thing that I'm noticing is, buyers are not willing to do anything to a home right now. It has to be in show. It has to be ready to go. It has to be turnkey. And if there are, I would say more than, from my perspective, and everyone else might have something else to say, but if there's more than, let's say, 4 or 5 things that come back on the inspection list that are minor things, they're terminating. I've had 3 terminations in the past 3 weeks, where 2 years ago you could have worked these issues out. So it's definitely an environment where you have to be able to negotiate with that other agent to get to a bottom line where everyone agrees, for sure.
100%.
I agree. I mean, I'm seeing that as well, that location is less important than what it was before. I have clients that, they hone in on a specific location and they start drifting like way in different areas. So, and they are okay with that. So, that I'm seeing that with multiple clients as well, that location is kind of secondary to price. So that's interesting that your statistics are kind of aligning with what we're seeing on the streets.
Hey, it's Cheryl. But I wonder if part of that is this generation of buyers looks at real estate a whole lot differently. They're not looking at real estate as I'm going to stay there for 20 to 25 years and raise my family there. They look at it as a wealth building vehicle that they can get in the game, as we've been encouraging our clients to do, get in the game, and then they can take that equity and then second or third house, look down the road a little bit. I think that probably has a lot to do with price and location flip-flopping a little bit.
No,
Agree.
Cheryl, it's Ken. I agree. I'm seeing that in the first-time home buyer, younger generation, upper 20s, low 30s. That's kind of where I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, have been left out of the market for the last four years.
Mm-hmm.
So they just want to get into the market. So, and they're probably very price sensitive, right?
Yeah.
They're very price sensitive, and they recognize that rent is just foolish and it's 100% interest, and they just want to start building wealth, and that's
There
their
you
mindset.
go.
Hey, so this is Terry from Buckhead. I'll make one comment about the flexibility of, they're willing to drift further and further out to look, which is really different than before. I experienced that on the listing side, where I had a Buckhead condo very competitively priced, and it was losing sales to new construction far, far away, which was really bizarre. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes we need to be aware that we're not only competing against our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which just speaks to the whole location comment, right? They're choosing price over location because they're sensitive to price, and price doesn't always just mean sales price. New construction a lot of times comes with incentives, and that's a factor in price, right? So an interest rate buy down, a closing cost assistance, a extras in the house versus having to pay for it after closing, all that's kind of summed into that price comment, right? But anyway, we start and end on time, guys. So it's 11:30. Have a good one.
Guys, good to see you.